Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about gap years. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about my experience with taking a gap year after university. But I'm sure that if you are someone who is planning on taking a gap year after finishing high school, then this will still be applicable to you. So I'll be splitting this video into 3 parts. In the first part, I'll talk about my gap year experience and what I did and why I chose to take a gap year. And then the second part, I'll be talking about some pros and cons that I feel you should be aware of if you're taking a gap year. And in the final part, I'll be answering questions that I received on my Instagram. So let's get started. So in between my second and third year of university, I was preparing to apply for medicine. So I was studying for the UK CAT exam, which is like a clinical entrance exam, and I was preparing my application and things like that. But then, like about a month or 2 before the application was due, so the application's due in October, so I think like right before I went back to university in September that year, I decided that I didn't want to do medicine anymore because I felt like it wasn't right for me, and I thought that the life of a doctor would be too stressful and I wasn't sure I wanted to put myself through that. So I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna do medicine. But then I went to university and I was so confused because I was in my final year at this point in 2018, like the end of 2018, and I was really struggling to decide what I wanted to do. And to be honest, I felt like everyone around me, like all of my friends, all my course mates, kind of knew what they wanted to do, and they were like applying to masters or like medicine. Like a lot of my course mates were applying to medicine, and then some had even like secured jobs and stuff like that. So I was quite pressured to feel like I had to know what I wanted to do, but I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And so yeah, third year went on and it was quite a stressful year with like the dissertation and like all of that stuff and having to like focus on my exams and whatever. So it got to like March 2019 and it was like coming up to like the final 2 months of university, and I was still not sure what I wanted to do. But at this point I realized that I really enjoyed like a few of my modules in my final year, and I thought that maybe I could specialize and do a master's in one of those areas. So at the time it was human anatomy and stem cells and regenerative medicine. So I started looking for like masters in these areas and I found quite a few actually. And so I was like, oh, I'm gonna apply for a master's. But then I kept trying to like apply or like write my application, but I just felt like I didn't know what to say in my like personal statement, or like, you know, to talk about like what my motivation to study this course was. And so I feel like I was kind of forcing, at that point I felt like I was kind of forcing myself to do a master's that I didn't really want to do, or not that I didn't want to do, but I wasn't sure I wanted. And it was because of like the pressure of like, you know, having to go straight into a master's and having to know what you want in your life and stuff like that. So eventually it was like coming up to my final exam, so I think this was around May now, and I just decided that I'm not gonna apply for a master's, I'm not gonna do anything, I just want to like take a year out. This was quite a scary decision to come to. Like I feel like because there's so much pressure for like university students to know what they want, and then like from your parents and from your family as well, that you should go straight into a master's and you should have a job and things like that. I was very scared to tell my parents that I didn't want to go on to study some more. I just wanted to like wait a bit. But luckily my parents were quite understanding after I explained to them that I really wasn't sure and I just wanted some time to like look for other options and just understand myself better and figure out what it is I actually want to do. So that's the reason why I decided to take a gap year. So now let's kind of talk about what I did during my gap year and what my plan is now. Initially, I was just traveling. So when I graduated from university, I went back home and then I traveled around Malaysia for a bit with one of my friends. And then I went to Indonesia to spend some time with my family. And then I even went to New York for 2 weeks with my younger sister. It was a holiday for me. It wasn't a holiday for her because she had like some conference thing, but it was a holiday for me. And actually it was during that trip when I had a lot of time to myself without any pressure from anyone who was kind of like forcing me to get something done. And it was during that trip when I decided that I want to do medicine. I feel like all my friends literally know how indecisive I am, and I feel like when I finally decided I wanted to do this, I was literally so scared to tell anyone because I feared that they would be like, oh my god, I can't believe you just decided to do this again. But the truth is I had a lot of time to reflect on this trip because I spent most of this trip on my own, and I realized that the entire time I kept like going back and forth between wanting to study medicine and not wanting to study medicine, it was because I was afraid of failure. So if you don't already know this about me, I applied to medicine the first time I applied to university from high school, and I didn't get in, and so I decided to study biomedical sciences. And then during my biomed degree, I decided to study medicine again, which you just found out that I decided not to again. So this was like the third time I decided I wanted to study medicine. And yeah, I realized that this whole time I kept going back and forth, well, especially during my third year of my degree, I kept going back and forth, was because I was really scared that I wouldn't get in again. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm not cut out for it, maybe I'm not made for the role. There's so many other people who are better than me, like why should I apply, why would they pick me, all of that stuff. So I was afraid of trying, even though there's literally no harm trying because you never know until you try. And yeah, I just kept putting it off, and I kept saying I didn't want to do it, and I kept trying to find something else I wanted to do, but in the back of my head I knew that that was the one thing I wanted the most in this world. So it was hard to admit that. It was hard to admit that I'd been kind of self-sabotaging my life, like my career goals, because of the fear of failure. So when I finally decided this, I came home from that trip and I decided to start looking at like where I could apply and options for where I can go to med school. And also I decided I wanted to fill up some of my time in my gap year doing some sort of work experience related to medicine. So I decided to start looking for things to do, and I found a couple of universities that applications were still open for, and I decided that I'd apply to those universities. And at the same time, I managed to find an internship that was related to medicine and could give me a lot of hands-on experience that I could use towards my application, but also to fill up my time and just learn a little bit more about the field of medicine. So at the end of December, I moved to India, and luckily I didn't just move here on my own randomly. My sister lives here. So I've been living with my sister ever since, and I was doing an internship for about 2 or 3 months before the virus came and ruined everything. But yeah, I did really enjoy my internship, and I do feel like now I definitely know I want to do this, and nothing's gonna stop me now. So that's what I've been up to for the last 1 year. So now I'm gonna talk about some pros and cons that I've kind of learned over the last 1 year. Just to clarify, these are not really like pros and cons. They're more kind of things that are good about taking a gap year and that can help you, but things that you should be aware of and that you might want to be more careful about. So let's start with the pros. The first is that I got time to really think about what it is I wanted to do without any sort of like time pressure. While at university, I felt like there were so many other things to worry about that I didn't get a lot of time to actually sit and think about what I wanted, and that's why I really struggled to decide what I wanted. So it was nice to have a lot of time to give to think about what I wanted to do and really set my heart on it. Just checking my notes. Secondly, I got time to finally focus on myself and grow as a person mentally. That makes sense. Partly I would say that this is due to the pandemic and having a lockdown and having a lot more time to focus on myself. But even before the lockdown and before I started my internship, I was kind of taking time to myself and just doing things that I enjoyed that I didn't get to do as much of when I was at university. So yeah, that was really nice. It was nice to play the guitar after a long time, to read books again, to just like enjoy things that I used to enjoy before university came and like damaged me. Okay, and thirdly, it was really good to rekindle my passion for learning. Honestly, I felt like at the end of uni, I really hated studying and I really hated learning. Partly because of like what I was studying, I feel like I was always comparing myself to other students and always saying that I wasn't good enough, and I was always comparing myself to other medics especially, and being like, oh, I could have been one of them if I just worked harder, I could have been one of them if I just did this differently. So I was never happy doing the course I was doing because I always wanted to be doing medicine. So I really hated studying, and being out of education for a year has really helped me to like refine that passion that I have for studying and learning and for medicine. And yeah, hopefully once I go back to university, there'll be like a new focus for me and I won't be as annoyed or as upset as I was before. Okay, so now let's talk about the cons. It is really hard not to compare yourself. So in the beginning of my gap year, I was looking at all my course mates and friends starting new jobs, starting new degrees, and just doing things that were related to their like career goals and all of that. And it was really hard not to compare myself and feel left out. I almost felt like I made a mistake, that maybe I should have just carried on doing a master's that could have got me somewhere in the future. But then I had to realize that we're all on our own paths, and what they're doing is for their selves and what I'm doing is for myself. And there's no reason for me to compare myself to them, because I know that what I'm doing is going to be beneficial to me in the future, because I was sitting and properly thinking about what I wanted to do rather than forcing myself to do a course that I may not end up enjoying just because I felt like I had to go to university and keep studying. The second thing that I think is a con is that I started to think that whatever I was doing or taking a gap year was going to look bad to future employers or my future applications. One way I found to kind of not think this way is that whatever I'm doing in my gap year will have some sort of transferable skill that I can apply to future applications. And also it's really important to realize that you have to do what's right by you. And if that means to take a year or more to focus on yourself, then you just have to do that. Like, this all comes down to how you show your skills and how you reflect on your skills, because whatever you choose to do in your gap year, you will get some sort of knowledge or some sort of skill from it, and you can always apply that to future applications. Just to give an example, like if you went traveling on your own, you can talk about how it gave you confidence or initiative to talk to people you wouldn't normally talk to and step out of your comfort zone and things like that. So yeah, these two things are not really cons in the sense that they're really bad and you shouldn't take a gap year because of them, but they're things to be aware of that you might want to consider before you do take a gap year. So now we're on to my favorite part of the video. I was honestly really overwhelmed by the responses I got on Instagram, so thank you so much if you asked a question. There are about 15 questions, so bear with me while I answer all of these. So the first and most common question I got was, how did your parents react? I did briefly talk about this in the earlier part of my video, but I'm just gonna go into it in a little bit more detail here because this was a very common question. It's important to sit and talk with your parents about what exactly it is you want to do during your gap year, and to tell them that, you know, you are planning on going back to education if that's what you're planning on, or that you do have a plan in the future but that you just want to take a bit of time to relax and have a breather. If it's because high school was too stressful or if it's because university was too stressful. But just make sure you sit and talk to them and explain to them that you're doing this because it's what's best for you and you need that time to kind of like recover from whatever stress you were experiencing, because that's what it was for me. Like, I feel like university was really stressful and I really hated it in my last year, and I just wanted some time to be like, I need to recover. If your parents still disapprove, which can often be the case, I feel like you need to sit and talk to them and explain to them that at the end of the day, it is your life and they shouldn't be forcing their views on you. This can be hard if your parents are financially supporting you, which mine are, but I did reassure them that I'm not going to be doing things that are extremely expensive. And luckily for me, my dad actually encouraged me to go traveling, and he actually told me if that's what I wanted to do for like a year, that he would let me go for traveling for a year. But I didn't actually want to go traveling for a year, so I didn't do that. But to answer the question, how did my parents react? I do feel like they were quite surprised at first that I wanted to take a gap year. I think because they kind of had this like feeling that I was very motivated and I was very focused. But to be honest, I lost a lot of that motivation and focus in university because of how much I was like blaming myself for not getting into the course that I wanted. So I just feel like I needed some time. So I explained that to them, that I just needed some time to find what it is I want again and kind of find that passion for something again. If you feel like I didn't answer this question properly, I'm really sorry, because I don't feel like I am very well informed on this, because I do feel like even though my parents were a bit surprised, they were still very supportive of me taking a gap year, and so I didn't really struggle that much. But I'm more than happy to have a conversation about this, so please message me if you still feel like I didn't reply this properly. I'm sorry. What do you think about semester at sea? Okay, so I didn't actually know what this was and I had to look it up. But after looking it up, I think I've kind of understood what it is. It basically is a semester where you go and like travel across the world on a cruise, and you have classes and you learn things, but you also travel and explore other countries. This sounds like a really great experience, obviously, if you're able to afford it. And since it is like one of those well-known popular things, it definitely would fill up your time and also look good to future employers or future applications, because they'll like have an idea of what it is you did during your gap year. The next question is, would a gap year look bad on my CV? And I also got another question that was asking how a gap year might affect employment, like what have you been doing kind of questions. To address this, I again kind of did talk about it in the previous section, but you just have to find like ways to put into words what you did and how you learned from them. So obviously, if you're going to go traveling, then you can talk about like the skills you learned from that. But if you're going to do a course, you can add that into your CV. If you're going to do an internship, then again, that's going to fill up your CV. Yeah, I think just be aware that this is something that can become an issue, but I think you have to explain yourself really well. Now that you have taken a gap year, what have you learned? This is a really good question, and I don't think I've actually thought about it. I think probably my biggest takeaway from this gap year is that I need to stop comparing myself to everyone around me, because we're all on our own journeys and everyone has their own paths, everyone has their own goals, and it's so unrealistic for you to expect your journey to be one straight line, because probably it's gonna look like I don't know how to explain it, but like it's not always gonna be an upward slope. Like you are sometimes gonna have like downhills. You are sometimes gonna have ups and downs, and eventually you'll end up where you want to be. But don't compare yourself to other people, because you're just hurting yourself if you do that. And I feel like this was a big problem for me, and I definitely learned to stop doing that. I mean, not stop, but a bit better. What has been the best thing about taking a gap year? I I think the time, like I really enjoyed having so much time to just do things that I enjoy and like spend time with family, meet up with cousins who I haven't met up with in a while. It was really nice to have so much time to spend with them, where before I would kind of be restricted to like the 2 or 3 weeks I'd be home for holidays or something like that. So yeah, that was really nice. I also kind of have to admit that one of the best things about taking a gap year was starting a YouTube channel, because this is something I never thought I would do. I mean, like I did want to be one of those like international student vloggers in the UK when I was studying my undergraduate degree, but I never had the confidence to like sit in front of a camera and talk about myself. So this is crazy. Like I honestly think this is the best thing that I did during my gap year. What has been your favorite memory or experience from your gap year? And then another question also asks, what is your favorite and worst thing about the experience? So I'm gonna do both. My favorite thing about the gap year definitely has to be traveling. I got to travel around Malaysia, and then I also got to go to Indonesia and see my family. And I also did a trip to New York, and then I also did a trip to Goa. And I feel like I just said also like a million times. But definitely traveling is one of my favorite things about the experience. I did travel a little bit while I was in university, but I don't think I enjoyed it as much as I have during my gap year, because I feel like there was no pressure to like, oh my god, I have to do this assignment, or oh my god, I have to study that lecture. So yeah, I did really enjoy traveling during my gap year. The worst thing about this experience, I think, would be that in the beginning I spent a lot of time being upset with myself and comparing myself to others and thinking that I'd made a mistake, but eventually I realized that I didn't make a mistake. So yeah, the worst thing kind of turned out being a good thing as well, I guess. How are you feeling about going back into education after taking a gap year? Honestly, I'm excited. I think that it's gonna be really good. I'm super excited to finally study something that I actually want to study. And yeah, I think it'll be really fun and I'll learn a lot, and I'm sure that it'll be hard, but I'm definitely more motivated and more focused now, so I'm excited. The next question says, talk about your mental health strategies. So I did reach out to this person and kind of have a conversation about what exactly they meant by this. And basically it was to talk about like how to manage your mental health during your gap year and not feel like you're falling off track and things like that. I think one of the things that I found really helped me is to kind of stay off of Instagram and Facebook and things like that, because a lot of the time I would like see friends or course mates or whatever, people I knew doing great things and accomplishing amazing things, and I would feel like I'm so far behind and things like that. But avoiding looking at that stuff was the first step to kind of remembering that not everything you see on social media is real. Like you don't know their struggles and you don't know how far they've taken to get there. And the second thing is also just reminding yourself that we're all on our own paths and we're all on our own journeys, and there's no reason for you to compare yourself to someone else. The only person you should be comparing yourself to is yourself. This is quite a hard one. It's easier said than done, but yeah, I feel like just remind yourself that there's no such thing as off track. Like you're just doing what's best for you. You're focusing on yourself. You're taking the time to recover from hard degrees, and it's okay to have that time, and just yeah, focus on yourself and do things that make you happy. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've been doing, I think. I don't know, I feel like I'm not very good at answering these questions, guys. Do you think it was the right decision for you, and what made you decide to take a gap year? So I already answered the what made me decide to take a gap year part, but yes, I do think it was the right decision for me. I feel like if I had gone on to do a master's that I would have ended up not wanting to do in the end, I would have really hated it. I would have not been motivated. I would have not been focused. I wouldn't have done as well as I could have if I had waited to really find something that I'm passionate about. So I'm really glad that I did take the time, because now I'm gonna go back into education with a newfound passion and a newfound motivation that I'm sure will take me further than if I had just decided to go straight into it. Would it hurt my prospects if I work or do something unrelated to my future course or job in my gap year? I don't think it would. I feel like I've kind of already answered this, but it's all about how you choose to portray the skills that you've learned. So for example, if you decide you want to become a lawyer, for example, but you decided to start teaching during your gap year, or did one of those like teaching English abroad and something like that, you can always talk about different skills that you learned during teaching. Like, I'm sure there's a lot I don't know per se, but for example, you can talk about organization and like confidence and public speaking and things like that. I'm sure those are important transferable skills that you can use as a lawyer. So I don't think it's necessary for you to do things related to your future job or career, but this does depend on what it is you want to do, because I know that for like a course like medicine, they do have like some requirements that you have to have some sort of work experience and things like that. So it does depend what you want to do. How did you fill your time? So again, I feel like I've already kind of answered this, but I traveled, I read books, I did an internship, and then I stayed at home for the last 3 months. That's pretty much it. Where did you go? So I feel like, again, I've already kind of answered this, but I'll just repeat it again for the sake of the question. I went to Malaysia, I went to Indonesia, I went to New York, and I went to Goa. I think that's it, before the pandemic hit and ruined everything. What's the biggest change you've seen in yourself having had your gap year? Honestly, I think I'm more confident and I'm more motivated. I feel like I've used the word motivated like 100 times in this video, and I'm really sorry, but that's literally the only way I can describe how I feel now, because I was just like, I don't know how to explain how much I hated education when I finished my course. Like, I didn't want to ever touch a book or study again, because I was like, I hate it. It was so stressful. I didn't do very well. I didn't enjoy it. But then, yeah, taking the time out to kind of just like step back a bit and recover from all of that trauma, I feel more passionate about the subject that I want to study now. And yeah, I think I just feel more like happy and I feel more confident. So definitely a good shout taking a gap year. Why did you decide to come to India? Well, I decided to come here to do an internship mainly, but also despite being of Indian origin, I've only lived in India for 4 years of my life, and that too in a city where I'm not actually from. So it was kind of also a way for me to kind of enjoy my country a little bit more. And yeah, obviously I have some family here, so I'm not completely on my own. So it's been really nice to kind of enjoy being in India and also learn a lot from my internship. Was it stressful? Yes and no. Like, it was definitely stressful trying to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And in the beginning of my gap year, I feel like there was a lot of pressure from like family to decide what I wanted to do quickly. But once I had some more time to myself, like when I went on that trip and I was on my own, was when I really decided what I wanted to do, because there was no outside pressure telling me, oh, you should do this, or you should do this, or you should do this. Because I am someone that's quite easily influenced by people around me, especially when I'm feeling quite like low and I'm not sure what I want, which I found was happening a lot in the beginning, when like some people were telling me, oh, you're really good at this, you should do this, and you're really good at this, you should do this, and I was just getting more and more confused. So it was definitely a bit stressful in the beginning, but it can be, like, it should be really nice and relaxing, which it was for the most part, but I didn't want to lie and say it wasn't stressful, so there you go. And last question, did you feel left out or were you relieved to have a break? Honestly, both. I did feel left out. Like, I did feel like I could have been out there finishing a master's by now, but at the same time I was really relieved to just have a break and not have the pressure to like study and do assignments and all of that stuff. And the good thing is that now I know what I want to do and I'm more passionate about it. Yeah, I feel like for the most part, I was relieved to have a break. But definitely there were times I did feel left out. So that's the end of this video. I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you are someone that's considering taking a gap year, whether it is after your high school or after university, I hope that this video helped you in some way. Feel free to message me or comment down below if you have any more questions. I'm more than happy to talk about this. And yeah, see you in my next video. Bye.